What could drive a 62-year-old grandmother, a woman who had dedicated her entire life to her family, to sell her ancestral home, lie to the children she adored, and fly over 5,500 miles to meet a 28-year-old man she had never seen in person? Rosa de la Cruz believed she was flying to the true love of her life. Instead, she walked straight into a waking nightmare, a tragedy that would rock two nations and expose a deadly romance scam network. How could a woman who had single-handedly raised 5 children and weathered so many of life's storms fall victim to the most brutal of betrayals? And why did her dream of a second chance end in blood and tears? This story is more than just a crime. It's a chilling, cautionary tale about loneliness in the modern world. If you want to know the heartbreaking truth, hit that like button, and together we'll peel back the layers of this tragic story.
Born in 1962 in a rural village in the Bataan province of the Philippines, Rosa Fernandez's life was never easy. She married young, at 19, to Antonio de la Cruz, a hard-working jeepney driver. Together, they built a modest life in Manila, running a small grocery store and raising 5 children. To Rosa, Antonio was her rock, her love, her everything. They built their world together, brick by painstaking brick. But tragedy struck when she was 58. Antonio, her partner in life, passed away after a long battle with diabetes. Rosa's world shattered. She was suddenly alone, left with only memories and the weight of responsibility. The house that once buzzed with the laughter and chaos of 5 kids was now terrifyingly silent. Her children, her greatest pride, were now grown and had scattered, from different cities across the country to far-off lands, all chasing their own dreams. In Philippine culture, family is everything. So when her children left, Rosa didn't just lose their presence, she lost her sense of purpose. The weight of the empty nest pressed down on her every day. The familiar sounds of daily life, the clatter of meal prep, the sound of laughter, even the arguments were all gone. Her loneliness was deepened by social pressure. Her neighbors, well-meaning but nosy, constantly prodded her, urging her to find a new companion. "You have to live your life again, Rosa," they'd often say. That invisible pressure made her feel like a target for gossip, labeled as lonely and in need of something more. She knew she needed something, but what? What could possibly fill the vast emptiness in her heart? Loneliness was a ghost that haunted every corner of her life. And in her desperate search for comfort, she unknowingly stepped onto a dangerous path. Her children, busy with their own lives, had no idea that their strong mother was slowly drowning in isolation. Whenever they called, she would force a smile, pretending everything was fine. But behind that smile was a heavy heart. The woman who once filled the house with warmth and energy now found herself talking to her plants. And then, in that silence, a sudden glimmer of hope lit up her phone screen, a promise of love from a man she had never met. It all started innocently enough at the gentle urging of Lise, her youngest daughter. "Mom, you should get on social media. It will help you stay connected with us." Rosa was hesitant at first. She had lived her whole life in the real world, where people talked face to face. The idea of using a smartphone felt foreign and intimidating. But Lee's words echoed in her mind, and eventually, Rosa decided to give it a try. With a few clumsy taps, she entered the vast world of social media. Her first stop was a Facebook group for Filipino expats in Australia, where she could connect with people from her homeland living abroad, just like her own children. At first, she was a silent observer, scrolling through photos and reading posts. But slowly, she began to feel a sense of community. She started leaving comments, sharing experiences, and offering words of encouragement. The once shy woman became more active. The digital world was no longer a strange land. It gave her a sense of belonging. She wasn't just a mother or a widow anymore. She was a person with a voice. And then a message appeared. A friend request from a man named Dylan Mitchell. His profile said he was a 34-year-old construction supervisor in Melbourne, a Filipino-Australian who was recently divorced. He looked friendly and seemed trustworthy.
His first message was simple, but it struck a chord with Rosa. "Your post about missing homemade adobo made me smile. My ex-wife was Filipina, and I still crave authentic Filipino food." Adobo, the national dish, the taste of home, of family. Rosa's heart warmed. It had been so long since someone had taken such a personal interest in her life. She hesitantly typed back, her curiosity growing with every word. She had no idea that this small act was pulling her into a sophisticated web of lies, where trust would be shattered and dark secrets would be brought to light. A tiny spark had been lit, but it was about to erupt into a destructive inferno. The initial chats quickly blossomed into a deep connection. Dylan's messages became an essential part of Rosa's day. The good morning texts, the good night wishes, and the heartfelt conversations that stretched late into the night. Every day he brought something new, a promise of understanding and companionship. They shared their pain and loneliness. Dylan spoke of his broken marriage, of the difficulty of starting over. Rosa, in turn, opened up about her loss, the quiet house, and how much she missed her children. They bonded over their shared pain. Dylan was masterful. He remembered the smallest details, like how Rosa liked her mango with a bit of shrimp paste. Those little things made her feel seen and valued. For Rosa, this wasn't just a conversation. It was the feeling of being wanted, of being loved for who she was, not just for her title as a mother or grandmother. For the first time in years, Rosa felt a desire for companionship, and more importantly, a desire to be seen as a woman. Each text, each call drew her in closer. She didn't feel lonely anymore. Dylan's words became the light at the end of her dark tunnel. To solidify her trust, Dylan started video calls. Rosa was thrilled to finally see the face of the man who had captured her heart. But she had no idea that what she was seeing was a deep fake. Dylan's face and voice were carefully generated to match the image of the man Rosa wanted. He would occasionally send small gifts, cheap trinkets wrapped in loving words, a scarf, a stuffed animal. To him, they were worthless, but to Rosa, they were everything. They were proof of a love that crossed borders. Her dream was becoming a reality built entirely on lies. Have you ever seen someone get so caught up in an online relationship that it became alarming? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We need to raise awareness about these dangers. Once the emotional connection was strong enough, Dylan began planting the seeds of his financial scam. It started casually. He mentioned financial troubles, issues with his temporary work visa that were preventing him from accessing his bank account. He painted a picture of a good man who had fallen on hard times, something Rosa could easily sympathize with. The first request was small, but it opened the floodgates. "Can you help me with a little bit to renew my permit? If I don't, I can't work. And if I can't work, how can I come to you and provide for our future?" His words played on her sense of guilt and responsibility. She made the first transfer. 25,000 pesos, not a small amount, but Rosa saw it as an investment in their future happiness. But that was just the beginning. Dylan's problems grew more severe, his requests more urgent. First, it was a medical emergency. His ailing mother needed urgent surgery. Dylan created a desperate scenario, and Rosa, a natural caretaker, couldn't ignore it. She sent another 50,000 pesos. Next came a lucrative business opportunity he'd stumbled upon, which required an initial investment. It all sounded so plausible, so promising. To meet the escalating demands, Rosa began making sacrifices. She sold what little jewelry she had left, and even borrowed money from relatives. Each time, the story was the same. "Just a little more, my love. This is the last time, I promise." The small amounts quickly ballooned into hundreds of thousands of pesos. With every transfer, Rosa fell deeper. She was too invested, both emotionally and financially, to turn back. Meanwhile, her family started to notice something was wrong. Lee, her daughter, grew worried about the late-night calls and the change in her mother's personality. When Lee asked about Dylan, Rosa became defensive and secretive. "You wouldn't understand," Rosa would say, her voice trembling. "He's different. He loves me." Dylan had planted seeds of doubt in Rosa's mind, telling her that her children didn't understand her loneliness and were just trying to sabotage her happiness. Slowly, Rosa began to believe him. She isolated herself from her own family, trapped in the fantasy world her scammer had built for her. After months of talking through a screen, Rosa's desire to meet in person became overwhelming. She was tired of the distance. She wanted to feel his love for real. One evening, Rosa started looking up flights to Sydney. The idea of being with Dylan, of feeling his arms around her, was an irresistible pull. When she brought up meeting, Dylan seemed hesitant, blaming his busy work schedule. But his hesitation only strengthened her resolve. Her children's skepticism fueled her need to prove that this love was real. She decided to act in secret. She began the process of getting a passport, each step bringing her closer to the moment she longed for. But to fund the trip and to help Dylan one last time, Rosa did the unthinkable. She decided to sell the family's ancestral home, the keeper of so many memories, the house where her children had grown up. Without a word to her kids, she signed over the deed to a buyer and received a large sum of money. She lied to her children, telling them she was taking a 3-week vacation to visit a distant relative. Her determination was now absolute. She believed this was her chance to find happiness, to prove to the world that she was more than just a mother and a grandmother. She was Rosa, a woman with dreams of her own. As Rosa's plan moved forward, on the other side of the world, Brett Coleman and his accomplices, Tommy Chong and Alex Rivera, were feeling the pressure. Rosa's insistence on meeting forced their hand. Brett started to panic, but his partners saw an opportunity. "We can bleed her dry in person," they suggested. A plan was hatched. They rented a fake apartment, decorating it to look like the home Dylan had described to Rosa, all with the goal of tricking her into handing over everything she had. While Rosa was dreaming of a new beginning, her scammers were preparing for her ruin. Rosa's story is a harrowing reminder. Please share this video with your loved ones to help them recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Finally, the day came, December 15, 2023. Rosa stepped off the plane at Sydney's Kingsford Smith Airport, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and hope. This was the moment she had dreamed of. She scanned the crowd, searching for the man who had promised her the world. And then she saw him, Dylan, or at least someone who looked like him. It was actually Brett, using another man's ID. But to Rosa, he looked just like the pictures, warm, welcoming, everything she had imagined. For a brief moment, everything was perfect. His smile, his voice, she felt a wave of relief. Her dream had come true. But she had no idea this was the beginning of the nightmare. The confusion started as soon as they left the airport. Instead of a cozy apartment, Rosa was taken to a seedy motel with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign. Her excitement began to fade. Dylan's demeanor shifted too. He became cold, distant, and impatient. The man she had spoken to for months now seemed like a stranger. To make matters worse, Dylan introduced 2 other men as his colleagues, Tommy and Alex. Their cold stares and dismissive attitudes only added to her growing unease. Something was terribly wrong. She had come all this way, sold everything, and now she was here in a strange place with strange men. The truth began to unravel on the 3rd day. While Rosa was alone in the room, Tommy and Alex burst in. They began to violently ransack her luggage, taking all of her cash and traveler's checks. "What are you doing?" Rosa screamed, her voice shaking with rage and panic. But it was too late. Dylan, or rather Brett, walked in and dropped the mask. His face was hard. "It's over, Rosa," he said coldly. "You've been scammed." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. There was no love, no promise, only lies and betrayal. "Listen here, old woman," Brett snarled. "You're going to give us everything,
or things are going to get ugly." Rosa pleaded desperately, "Dylan, please, I love you." Brett just laughed. "Dylan doesn't exist. The name's Brett, and you're about to lose everything." Her world completely imploded. In one cruel moment, Brett had destroyed it all. Cornered and terrified, Rosa had no choice. She transferred the last of the money from her account, hoping that once she gave them everything, they would let her go home. She asked for her passport back, but Brett's answer was the final, brutal twist of the knife. "You're not going anywhere until we're sure there's not a single dollar left." Her window of escape had slammed shut. In a fit of pure panic, Rosa tried to call her daughter Lise, but Tommy snatched the phone and smashed it. Completely cut off, Rosa screamed and fought back. In the chaotic struggle, Brett's rage exploded. He grabbed a glass bottle and brought it down hard on Rosa's head. The blow was fatal and she collapsed instantly. Brett and Tommy fled in a panic, leaving Rosa to die alone in a pool of her own blood. 6 hours later, her body was discovered by a housekeeper. On December 19th, Lise received a call from the Australian Federal Police. The news of her mother's death was an unimaginable shock. Lise had to fly to Sydney to identify her mother's body, an agonizing journey. The investigation was swift. Police followed the digital trail and uncovered the massive scale of the scam ring. 47 Filipino victims over 3 years, with millions of dollars stolen. Rosa was the first to die. Within 72 hours, Brett Coleman, Tommy Chong, and Alex Rivera were arrested. At the trial, Lisa's victim impact statement brought the courtroom to tears. The sentences came down. Brett Coleman received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tommy Chong was sentenced to 25 years and Alex Rivera to 20. Justice was served, but for Lise and her family, the pain of losing their mother would never fade. The tragedy of Rosa de la Cruz became a powerful wake-up call. The governments of the Philippines and Australia have since increased their collaboration to fight cybercrime. The ROSA Act was passed in the Philippines to protect vulnerable adults online. But the biggest lesson isn't in legislation, it's in us. Rosa wasn't naive or foolish, she was human, yearning to be loved, to be seen, and not to be forgotten. Her story shows the critical importance of open communication within our families. We need to create a safe space where our loved ones can talk about their loneliness and their fears without judgment. Romance scams thrive on isolation and secrecy. By building trust, we can prevent others from falling into the same trap. Know the red flags. A relationship that moves too fast, requests for money, emotional manipulation. If you see these signs in a loved one, approach them with love, not judgment. Please share this video so that Rosa's story can save others. Together, we can make sure that no one has to face the darkness of betrayal alone. Rosa's dream of love became a nightmare, but her story can be a light that guides others out of the darkness.